Welcome to the Femsplainers. I'm Danielle Crittenden. And a little bit of a heads up. This episode did not turn out the way I expected, for reasons you'll soon hear. But let me give you a little explanation behind what might be one of the most disastrous interviews we've ever had on this podcast. So a little while ago, a publicist reached out to me to ask if I wanted to book an interview with Nancy Jo Sales. Nancy Jo is a writer for Vanity Fair, a New York Times bestselling author, and the director of the HBO documentary Swiped, Hooking Up in the Digital Age. She has a new book out called Nothing Personal, My Secret Life in the Dating App Inferno. And I was like, yes, I would love to interview Nancy Jo, because she's done some important reporting on these apps, including interviewing the founders of the major ones like Tinder and Bumble and Match.com. And she's written about the havoc they've caused, especially in the lives of teenage girls. And she accuses them of being ripe with sexism and misogyny, and also soul destroying, reducing what we might once have called courtship to something akin to shopping online for sex and commodifying romance. When I got the book, however, it quickly became apparent it was more of a memoir, a very raunchy memoir of her dating life on Tinder. Those of you who are Hemingway fans might have had the same reaction I've had when reading his scenes about drinking. The characters meet on a hot square before noon, and the day of nonstop absinthe, red wine, etc. commences. I get vicariously sick and dizzy just reading about it. And so it was with Nancy Jo and her sex life. And listeners, this might be the moment to put on headsets if you're listening to this in a form that others might hear. So Nancy Jo begins her Tinder journey as a single mother living in New York at the age of 49, and she sets her profile as a woman seeking casual sex with men in their 20s. Unsurprisingly, a lot of casual sex with younger men commences. And look, if that's what you like to do as a consenting adult, go for it. But surprisingly, she does not set herself any parameters for quality control or safety. It's like, waiter, I'll have the cheapest absinthe on the menu, s'il vous plaît. She invites these complete strangers into her apartment, into her building's gym, onto her building's rooftop. Started wondering if her co-op board knew about this. And she has sex with them in every way you can imagine. She refers to them in nicknames: Mountain Boy, Beard Boy, Clueless Boy, and Theo the Ass Eater. You get the idea. One of them she really falls for is 20-something Abel, who ends up lying to her and cheating her of money. Also surprisingly is how consistently puzzled Nancy Jo was that she was not finding love or true romance among these encounters, a factor she blames alternately on patriarchy, sexism, and misogyny. Just a side note, when she uses a man for sex or hopes to find a rich man to meet her bills, she views this as empowering. Anyway, so I thought, wow, this is the real inferno part of her book. Nancy Jo is not just writing about the general problems these dating apps are causing, but writing a deeply cautionary tale about her own dehumanizing experiences. Well, apparently I got that last part wrong, as you'll hear. But before I bring Nancy Jo on, I reached out to my eldest daughter, Miranda, who, as a 29-year-old single millennial living in New York, has had her own experiences using these apps. I hope they haven't been like Nancy Jo's, or they are. I don't want to know about them. But I did want to hear if they are as awful as Nancy Jo describes, boiling over with misogyny, etc. Miranda had some pretty amusing insights to offer, especially at the idea of looking for Prince Charming on Tinder. Anyway, but before I bring on Miranda, just a reminder that if you are enjoying these conversations, even these disastrous conversations, please consider supporting the podcast at patreon.com/femsplainers. We can only keep going because of our subscribers at Patreon. And remember, you get a bonus episode every month where you get to ask our guest questions. That didn't work out with Nancy Jo. And you'll also get our monthly newsletter. And at certain levels, you can get the podcast early and ad-free. So please consider supporting us. Patreon.com/femsplainers. Regular listeners have heard us talk many times about the federal civil rights law called Title IX, the one that seeks to prevent sexual discrimination in education. But now I want to introduce you to a different Title IX. This Title IX produces maybe the best pair of shorts you'll ever own. Now, my late stepfather had a favorite pair of shorts he'd worn since literally he'd fought in the Korean War. And we'd say, why don't you ever get a new pair of shorts? Like, seriously. But he just shrugged because he knew he'd never find another pair of shorts he'd like so much. Well, now that I've received my first pair of Title IX shorts, I can kind of see what he was thinking. Because Title IX has produced quite literally the most perfect pair of women's shorts. It's called the clamber short, and it's definitely made for clambering and truly anything else you like to do in shorts. Tough, stretchy, comfortable, practical, cute. Clamber shorts are all of the above. Made out of super stretchy, abrasion-resistant fabric, they're basically indestructible. And thanks to a wide, comfy waistband and tons of pockets, I can wear them all day, no matter what I get into. Title IX gear is made by women for women. Title IX designs and sells performance outdoor gear and apparel for women on the move. Women like us femsplainers who are busy chasing waves, chasing toddlers, and of course, always chasing our next adventure. Title IX gear and apparel is built to perform and made to last. From innovative swim pieces to bottoms that actually fit, every product is designed for women seeking out their next adventure. Clamber shorts are technical enough for a day hike, comfy enough to wear on the couch, and they are genuinely really cute. And you can get them in 2 lengths as well. So throw them on and take them off. We've found our go-to-go hard shorts. I just think I'll probably invest in a few more pairs, unlike my stepfather. Anyway, right now, Title IX is offering our listeners $10 off and free shipping on orders over $100 when you visit title9.com/femsplain. So go to title9.com/femsplain for $10 off and free shipping on your order over $100. That's Title9, TITLENINE.com/femsplain. Miranda, welcome to the Momsplainers, or maybe it's the Daughter-splainers.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, honey. So you and I, over the years, we've talked a lot about these dating apps, and I think you go hot and cold on them. And I think right now you're in a cold period where you told me recently you deleted the apps.
Yeah. I feel like people just, you go through what you can tolerate. And my last date app involved a man spitting out his food onto the table in front of me. And I just thought, this is a low. This isn't bringing me joy. This is stressing me out. So I deleted them for a bit, but I think it's healthy to go back and forth. But
you blame the app for the fact that the guy spat in front of you?
I guess loosely, because I had always been told, like, I don't really have a pattern when I use apps. There are people that you kind of just vibe with right away, and they'll be like, let's meet up tomorrow, and you say sure. And then you figure it out as you go there. Then there are people that you can talk to for weeks and weeks, and then you might meet up with them after like a month. And this guy I had been talking to for a long time, and based on our conversations, he was an interesting guy, an empathetic guy who loved art and literature. And when I met him, he was like a frat boy that didn't know how anything worked, who spat up his food. So,
like a pigeon or something, then regurgitating and then eating it again, or?
I know this is a podcast, so I'm going to try to explain this visual as best I can. He literally just, like, it's like a cat putting out a fur ball, but without the sound, just a bleh, like, in front of me. I saw the whole thing happen, and I'm never going to look at Brinzino the same way again.
Well, okay, but again, I mean, the app didn't raise him, but you're saying what, that it's in the end, it's kind of random, or people are not what they seem in the texts, or because
I've been thinking about this. Like, I feel like instead of blaming it on other people, I think sometimes, and I think I do this, I think every person does this. I think when you read something, it's like why we have departments of literature devoted to different explanations of text. I think we look for what we want to see in the text, or it's easier to text someone over time and you don't have to respond right away. You can Google something without telling someone you Googled something and pretending that you know what it is. I think, we become who we think that we want the person, or who we think the person wants us to be. And I also think we interpret things based on also what we think we're looking for. And then when you meet in real life, it's like Cyrano de Bergerac. Like, it's so much harder to fake it in real life. Like, if you're an idiot or a freak or a jerk, that's going to become apparent in like the first 5 minutes. Whereas on like a text, you can conceal that better. Someone can say they like something. You can lie about it because no one can see your face and see that you're lying. It's easier to... not even to play games. Like, I do think that most people on apps are trying to get something. Like, even if that's a hookup, like, you want your hookup to be satisfying. Like, everyone is trying to get a satisfying experience. But I think it's just like, what made me delete my apps is I was just like, I'm talking to people I would never meet, and I don't think that's positive anymore. Like, I want to go out with people who are different from me, sure, but who know what I'm talking about, or know reference points, or, even having mutual friends kind of creates more of a civility in a way. Like, you can't be so badly behaved with each other because there's like a third party that knows you both.
Well, I also like this idea of you can embellish obviously much more with texts, and of course your picture. I understand a lot of these pictures can be quite misleading when you see them IRL. But
especially with older men.
Yeah.
I don't know what girls do. So like, if I come across as biased, it's because I'm not looking for chicks. But from my experience as a cis white woman, the profiles I've seen are usually cis men, and cis older men do not look like their photos.
Well, you could argue that, back in my day, you had sort of flirtation rituals. I'm sure many which would be considered completely inappropriate now, but it was done face to face. But you would still try and put up, a kind of artifice, that you're trying to make yourself your best you, at least initially.
I don't know. I like that, though. I don't think there's anything more thrilling than being picked up at a bar. I mean, that's not, or a lounge, or like a high-end place, or
Miranda,
a cocktail party.
I don't know how that came out to your mother.
Not like in a fucked up weird way, just like, a guy that you're looking at, he's looking at you, it's age appropriate, it's cute. He comes over and he just starts chatting you up. That's so much more. I mean, now, like, I re-downloaded an app and it's just so stressful. Like, I turned off the alerts because I thought, I'm not spending this much time on this thing. And I'm the type of person where if I get a phone alert, I have to answer it. I can't ignore it. Mm-hmm. And I will go on and there's like 6 people being like, asking you like stupid questions. And it's, it is draining. And I think that is something also, I think that's why people turn these apps on and off, is they are homework.
Because it's like social media. It's like Twitter. If you just obsessively are on any platform for any amount of time, I start to feel queasy. I mean, I have to.
Yeah, but you also have people just like asking you like mundane things. Like, it's like they're so reaching. I mean, it's like, I don't want to sound mean because that's, what you're supposed to be doing is connecting, but it is so hard to be like matched via an algorithm with a person you don't know, and you don't know what you have in common. You can kind of glean something like on Hinge. They have prompts or from people's photos. But it's just like people are really grasping at strings until something lands. And then, but it's like, I can't tell you how many times people have been like, so tell me about your furry friend. And it's like, this is Ringo. He's 3. No, he's not adopted.
You're talking about a dog. Let's be clear. We're talking about a dog. You're not into furries.
No, it's just like it becomes homework, and it'll be like my least favorite question too on an app. I'm trying to ask more interesting questions, but my least favorite question is, so what's new? And you're like, we've never met before. Literally everything in my life is new to you.
Is it at least followed by pussycat?
No, that would have been funny. No, it's not.
Yes, next time somebody says what's new, you should just reply pussycat query.
That's funny.
Can we talk a little bit? I know you have to be careful about, you were on one of these very, very, very exclusive apps.
Oh yeah.
Celebrities and bazillionaires go on, and you were telling me about this. I mean, as your mother, I get very excited, but I think you may have had the worst experience of all on this app. Is that fair?
I don't know if I'd say I had the worst experience. Like it's definitely material for life, but it's just like what you think that people are like aren't always how they appear. So you could say like, I'm going out with this guy. He's super rich. He's known for these awesome things. Everyone in the world who you would tell about without getting into the personality would be like, that sounds great. And then you can also say, well, he lies and he likes to date 16-year-olds. Like, it's just like, there are so many people out there that seem so perfect. And I do think that there's an element of like, we've made celebrities our own monarchy in a way. Like, I do think we have a hero worship of celebrities that's very like pure. We're always so shocked when they, do weird things, and they're human and they're people with lots of money that are beautiful. So they can do kind of whatever they want. But it's sort of, you go into an app like that and you just think like, you see pictures and you just think, what a perfect life. Like, we could go boating, like we could travel.
Even yachting, Miranda, yachting.
Yeah, yachting, traveling, private planes, every amazing restaurant that's impossible to get into. And even with just one of those things, like, if the person sucks, they suck. End of story. If the person is disrespectful, it's not going to make your dinner taste better. It's not going to make your trip more fun. So I think it doesn't really matter what a person has. It's
well, you also, I got the sense that when you would go out with men like that, because they could do anything, that this was more like, I got the sense from you that these guys weren't really looking for any kind of long-standing relationship, because
why would they?
Why would they?
Like, their biggest relationship is with their McLaren. Like, it's just like, why would you want a long-term relationship with me? Like, I have demands, I have wants. They're all annoying. They take you away from your speedboat. Like, and it's also too, like, I think the other thing is just like, when a guy isn't looking, like, you are a bag of chips. If you get stale, you're like not that expensive to obtain. They throw you out, and there's another bag of chips at like the bodega or whatever. And it's like, I feel like you're not, that's sort of the problem too, is like, you're not really that special. And then the other problem too with dating those kinds of guys is you have to go to their planet. Like, they won't come to your planet. They're not going to meet your friends. They don't want to meet your friends unless your friends are hot, and then they can set them up with their friends for the same situation. But usually, like, if you're like, it's my friend's birthday, we're all going to meet at this bar, can you come for a drink? The answer is like, probably no. And yeah, you have to go into their life, though. You have to hang out with their old weird friends. You have to go to like their dinners. You have to be on their social calendar. And I do have girlfriends who are in that position, and you'll have plans and they'll bail on you and be like, you know, my guy wants us to have dinner with, I don't know, like a producer or an investor or whatever. And you don't really have autonomy, right? Like you can't just be like, no. Because in a way too, I haven't been in this situation, but I have seen it in a way. It's like, if you live with that person rent free, you have less bills because of this person. If you're more reliant, like it's harder to say no. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, there's also an old saying, which I enjoy, which is any woman who marries for money ends up earning it. Like, as you say, that level, from what I have glimpsed, and I haven't dated one, but when they marry, they want like the highest level of executive assistant. That, as you say, you go into their planet, you run their lives, you run their houses, you are on their travel schedule.
Honestly, or not even. It's like they have a house manager for most of that stuff. It's like you just look hot, you do naked Pilates by the pool, you tell them what vitamins are fashionable, and you make sure they have them. You find them like black market growth hormone. You don't mind when they're going bald, rub it. And, you know, like
I'm getting depressed just thinking about it. Well, to go back to your point about, so it's so much more exciting to be approached in real life. And I mean, one of the, certainly what we hear from your younger sister, who's just entering the dating world at age 19.
I would kill to be 19 again. That's such a fun time. Everything feels like a story.
Well, that whole idea that doesn't even happen anymore with Gen Zs. Like there's no flirtation. There's no such thing as a date.
So
and
sad.
I don't, is that true? Do you think have the apps undermined, certainly in your world, this sense of playfulness?
I don't know.
Between men and women?
It's so hard to tell if it's apps, if it's COVID.
Yeah, well, this past
people
year
just wouldn't mingle. Yeah. I mean, you'd go out and like no one would talk to you that wasn't in your group. So, you know, you wonder if it's COVID, you wonder if it's the apps, you wonder if it's just like the world we live in and what social rules people are abiding by. I find I've become much more forward, which works. And I wonder now if there's been a switch where there's just more expected of women because we have more rules and comforts and boundaries. But I don't know. Yeah, it's.
Or could men be afraid? I mean, is there any truth to the idea that men are a little, certainly a nice guy is terrified that if he says the wrong thing or, you know, flirts with you,
I don't know. I don't
deck him in the face.
I don't think a lot of men. I'm not going to speak for them because I have no idea. But I don't think like, you know, a guy's like, I'm not going to talk to her because she looks like she would accuse me of rape. And like, I hope not. And if you're listening and you've thought this about me, just text me. Do I need a new haircut? Do I need a new shirt? Like, what can I do to not make you think that? But I don't know. I really don't know. And I wonder, I also wonder if people are just into their phones. Like, I'm definitely guilty of this. If I'm meeting a friend at a bar and I get there a little early, I'm not like looking around the room.
Well, that's
like the
true,
signal of like, approach me. I'm on my phone with a telepathic message saying, feel free to chat. But I look pretty engrossed. And even if I'm on Instagram, I've definitely had a bartender before. I was just on my phone and I was like, where is the bartender? And I went up to him and ordered and was like, I wasn't sure if you were done. You looked really busy. And I was like,
well, that is true.
You know, I mean, like that was my bad.
Well, that is very true that certainly between the last time I dated in 1987 and today, that idea that you can just sit in a place, that you just watch people, you know, or you have a book or a magazine, but you're also you're a little more engaged in the present than you are when you're on a phone. I mean, you know, in Paris, all the chairs outside cafes face forward, so it's for people watching. And now you walk by them and the people are all looking at their phones and not noticing the life and people passing.
Yeah, you're like, you have 2 feet in different worlds. Like, I think in reality and in this virtual reality. And I think that takes away, I'm guilty of it. Yeah, I'm guilty of it. And I don't love it. But also you do feel naked or like without an arm if you leave without your phone.
Yeah.
And also, like, you do everything on your phone. You can pay bills on your, like, you can pay your bar tab on your phone. You get your cab home on your phone. But I don't know. I do think like there is a sort of lack of that spontaneous movie romance and approach. I don't know if apps are to blame. I think apps might be a Band-Aid for another problem where I think people do feel more free on apps because even though there are pictures of your face, like it's not face-to-face. Mm-hmm. And I do wonder if that's a Band-Aid of another problem. And I don't know, it's people's way of still trying to connect, but not knowing how.
Nancy Jo talks a lot in her book about, she just says these apps have just opened up sluices of misogyny. I think she talked to a lot of 13-year-olds who get like male dick pics. I guess they have to be.
Why are 13-year-olds on dating apps?
No, well, that's a good question, but I think they are. I think
they have middle school
without their parents' knowledge. They're getting it from other boys and, you know, in their class. But she, anyway, have you experienced, do you think it opens you up to?
No, you can't send photos on an app.
Yeah. But you
can't send photos.
You get men saying really gross, offensive things to you a lot. I mean, I'm sure it obviously happens now and then, but.
Honestly, not really at all recently. I wonder if COVID had something to do with that, where people are just really isolated and you're just like, any conversation is good conversation. Like, I just want to connect. But I haven't had that in a really long time. And I don't feel like men are misogynistic. Like, maybe men will be men and they'll have horrible opinions about women. But let me tell you, me and my girlfriends have conversations about them too. Like, you know, you don't leave a conversation with a man and they're like, maybe that girl is an uptight bitch. And you're like, you know, I'm definitely calling my girlfriends and being like, that guy was a fucking psycho. Like, Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So I think it's just like, I don't think it's like loading a sexism machine. I just think, in a way, it's dating. Dating involves gossip. And
it also may have something.
You talk about that stuff to your friends. Like, you just do.
It may also have something to do with the fact that she set her settings to casual sex on Tinder. And then
First of all, the casual sex doesn't bother me, but people who use Tinder make me sad. It's like Tinder is like the Craigslist like missed connections page of a dating page. Like, if you're on Tinder, like, you don't even care, pardon the language, who you fuck. Like, it's like, I downloaded Tinder for 15 minutes. It was a no. It was like.
So that's where you, and then you go on Tinder and you set it to casual sex. You are obviously going to get a lot of guys being raunchy with you, and you shouldn't be surprised, would be my guess.
Tinder's also just garbage. Like, if you're on Tinder, it's like saying you grocery shop at 7-Eleven. Like, it's not like you're getting like quality, good produce. Like, if someone says they're on Tinder, I'm like, I actually have said this to a cousin. I've said this to a friend, and I'm like, we need to talk about what you're doing because it's not healthy. And it's not a good app. Like, it was the first app, but it's like someone who still really relies on Facebook. And you're like, what are you doing? Like, I need to intervene. This is not good. And I'd say there are better apps, but honestly, if someone at this stage is still on Tinder,
yeah, you may
I guess this
not
is
be getting a fair view of the world of dating apps.
Yeah, it's like the comments I want to say I don't think are good for publicity. I'll tell them to you later, but it's no one who goes on Tinder is it's like meeting someone after 2 a.m. Like it's just like a weird
and then well,
it's a weird place.
As it then becomes revealed in her book, and then she's surprised she doesn't have meaningful relationships.
Yeah, like you can just go on other apps and not mark that you're just down to hook up, which you can be, and
that's
just have
fine.
a better
if that's what you want to do.
Better algorithm of selection. I don't know. I found like all the people that I had likes from on Tinder were like 19-year-olds, and I was like 26, and younger men have never been my thing, but they were especially. Like a 19-year-old to me just looks like a little boy. Like they look like children. They don't look like young studs. You know what I mean? They look like little babies.
The thought of what Nancy Jo was doing with 25 to 29-year-olds, aside from the fact that I have a son that age, but even if I didn't, if your father were to suddenly leave me, Miranda, and you found out I was going on Tinder, trying to attract 26 to 29-year-olds, I think you would have an intervention for sure. But it would also be like, wouldn't that be like,
yeah, I've never dated that age range.
A golden retriever,
above 24,
a golden retriever puppy, like. That's me. Like, why would you do that? That's
get ready to not make your restaurant reservations because of Call of Duty. Have fun with that. It's also too, though, I feel like when I see these guys, like I feel like everyone, I don't know if that's my age, but I feel like people that are, I don't know, this might be psychotic, but I feel like people that are 30 to me look like they're in their late 20s. And I feel like people in their early 20s look like babies. Like, I just think they look like small children. And I mean, they also all dress the same. Like, I just feel like there's elements of young or older teenagehood that have continued on with the younger generation. Like, you see a group of 22-year-old girls on the street, like on, Broadway, and they're all in the same outfit. You're like, okay, when me and my friends were 22, we started to find our own styles. So I just feel like anyone who's in that age range, I'm just like, you are all the same. You are all children. You're all really self-conscious. You're still growing. You're still figuring yourselves out. Like, I'm 29, and to date a 25-year-old wouldn't be the weirdest thing in the world, but it does feel like cradle robbing. And also, like, what am I going to get out of this? I don't think 25-year-olds know how to have sex that well either.
Well, or
frankly,
just moving on.
Sorry, but I don't. It's like no.
That's what that was. I was trying to.
I want to have sex with a hot 19-year-old, and it's like
no. It's like a Labrador puppy. I was being subtle, Miranda. That was my subtlety. I
wasn't bringing animals into this
slobbering. But also one of the points you have made, and I mean I've seen it, is that men do genuinely seem to be maturing later than they were. When I was working, back in the day, I was working in a newspaper, and I was like 20, 21, and the people were 28. I thought, oh my God, they're middle-aged. Like, they seem so old.
I thought that too.
Well, maybe that's universal, but there is now a sense of a 25 to 30-year-old man, for various cultural reasons that we could go on about forever, but still do not have that urgency, that motivation to, pick their future wife, to settle down. And I think much later, it seems.
I think to say yes and to what you're saying, I think like to a cougar who wants a younger man, I think 33, because they have an apartment, they shouldn't have roommates. They might if they're losers, but they usually don't have roommates. But they're still fun. Like they'll still like be like, let's go to a bar. Like, let's go out. Let's have a time. They're still able to be like, I can wake up and feel like shit, but still go to work. Like it's not the same thing. And I think 33-year-olds are what cougar women want 25-year-olds to be. But like a 25-year-old is like on TikTok. Like he says the word clout.
He says the word what?
Clout.
What is, in what context? I have not heard.
Oh, like he wants clout, like internet clout or like TikTok clout. Not intellectual clout. That's what
I. Oh, you on your resume? You want clout.
You want sneaker clout. No, it's like a 25-year-old boy. It's like, honestly, I feel like at this point, dating a 15-year-old boy, it's like red flag. Yeah. No, I'm calling the police. They won't do anything because it's technically legal, but like gross. No.
Okay, so last question. What would you give your younger sister as she embarks into this crazy world of dating and apps? What advice would you give her?
Oh man, I've given her real advice that I won't tell you, but I would just say, like, number one, respect yourself. Number two, have a good time. Like, enjoy yourself. Like, it's not fun. You know, sometimes it's not super fun to date with purpose. And I would just say, get lost. Like, have that extra drink. You don't have real responsibilities right now. Have that extra drink. Talk to that guy a minute longer. Don't be so nervous. Don't be so self-conscious. Just enjoy yourself. And the other thing, too, that people forget when they're 18 or 19, you could possibly be part of someone's permanent memory. Like the guy that I dated when I was 18, I am still friends with him. I will always know his name. I could have dementia and like I would know this guy's name. But and vice versa. Like it's just like your youth at that age. Like
it's very true, right? It's kind of Proustian that and then like after 21 or whatever, it gets all kind of blurry and adult.
Do I remember who I dated at 25? No. Like who cares? But when you're 18, 19, 20, 21,
right.
You know, all those, and everything is so new. Like you just, all of those things really like,
well, it's sad when
in your memory.
Just how depressed this generation and puzzled and suicidal and not having fun with sex.
Yeah, guys, get over it. You know,
on you Gen Zers, stop whining.
It's life. You have one. There's no dress rehearsal. Have a good time. But I would just say, like, remember, and I mean, I'm worried B would take this heavily, but I would say, like, I feel like those ages are like a movie. They are. Like, everything you do feels cinematic. You care less about consequences. Like, I remember being in Paris at a respectable age. And my friend Charlotte and I stayed up all night. We went out.
This is when you did some summer program, right?
I was at Parsons Paris.
Right.
And Charlotte and I stayed up all night and we went skinny dipping in the fountains in front of the Eiffel Tower at like 6 a.m.
What? You were naked?
No, we had underwear on. We weren't that confident, but it was like,
you know, one of those... Zelda Fitzgerald in the fountains of...
No one, it was like 6 in the morning. No one was around. It was like not weird, but it's like one of those things. And my memory is horrible, but I so vividly remember that moment. It was so cinematic and like we just didn't care. And I would never do something like that now, number one. But
well,
also,
I hope not, Miranda. That would.
No, I haven't gone streaking in Washington Square Park recently.
I would have to stage an intervention.
No streaking incidents of late. But it's just at that age, like it's just so. I don't know. This might be anti-mom advice, but I do feel like when you're 19, you're you're like, I need to get married by a certain age or else I'm an old maid and I have to be more purposeful. And it's like, you should just date anyone who asks you out and that you like. And the second you don't like them, you should drop them.
Well, this was always, actually, no, this was mom advice. It was until you should be shopping, that locking yourself into relationships that are not satisfying, in your heart are not for the long term. Why tie yourself up at that age? It makes
only sense. Freaks marry the person they've known since they were like 17 or 18.
And sometimes it works out.
Yeah, but like mostly it's like, I think the external world is like.
No, but I think what I worry is sometimes, and maybe this is advice for the apps, is to be as you say, have fun, whatever, but to be purposeful with them, like see them as just another instrument in shopping, right? It is like shopping, but
yeah, have fun with it. Like, I think every time I use an app seriously, it becomes a bummer. And every time my notifications are off and it's just like, ha ha ha, it becomes more fun. But yeah, I would also just say, like, if apps aren't for you, don't feel forced to use them, but it will mean that you have to
put yourself out a little more.
Put yourself out there more than most people, which isn't a bad thing and probably is the better way to live your life.
Right. And meet
people. Yeah, and just like be everywhere and talk to everybody and enjoy every moment. Whereas on the apps, you can kind of just like, I don't know.
All right, Miranda. Well, thank you for your insights because I think I'm going to get different insights when I speak to Nancy Jo, but I'm very fascinated by your characterization of Tinder because what do I know? But
if you and Dad got divorced, I wouldn't be like, download Tinder. I'd be like, okay, we're putting you on these sites. If you download Tinder, I can't even make this joke. It's too elitist and fucked up. I'll tell you later. But don't use Tinder, femsplainer listeners. Don't do it. If you're on it, delete it.
We're more discerning consumers of dating apps. So yes. All right, darling. Well, thank you. Thank you for being honest. Thanks for talking to your mom about this otherwise highly awkward topic. And let's pour ourselves a glass of wine and talk offline.
Swipe right.
So now let's go to Nancy Jo Sales. She is, again, the Vanity Fair writer who has just written a book called Nothing Personal: My Secret Life in the Dating App Inferno. By now, you've probably heard me talk about Prose, the world's most personalized hair care. Well, I want to share a few updates since using the custom formulas Prose sent me. First up, my hair has never looked better, silky, strong, not faded or brittle. And for times when my hair tends to get dry, like when it's cold outside, I love its leave-in conditioner. I use it before blow drying, and it guarantees I won't have the frizzy split end look when I'm done styling. And that's maybe my overall favorite thing about Prose products. They've been formulated uniquely for me and the climate I live in, down to the zip code. And now that summer is coming along, I can ask Prose to change up the formula to deal with humidity. Because Prose knows there is more to you than just your hair type. Prose has given over 1 million consultations with their in-depth hair quiz, which is how I got started. With their algorithm and over 50 billion formula combinations, Prose determines a unique blend of ingredients to treat your exact concerns. Prose also has that review and refine feature that I mentioned. It lets me tweak my formulas for any reason, like the change of season, or even if I change addresses, hair color, or my diet. And if you're not 100% positive Prose is the best hair care you've had, they will take the products back. No questions asked. Prose is the healthy hair regimen with your name all over it. Quite literally, your name is on the label. So take your free in-depth hair quiz and get 15% off your first order today. Go to prose.com/femsplain. That's PROSE, prose.com/femsplain for your free in-depth hair quiz and 15% off. Nancy Jo, welcome to the Femsplainers.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi. Well, I just want to let you know that the last time I went on a date was in 1987. And I've learned from your book that things are a little different now. So, yeah. So be my Virgil, guide me through this inferno that you've described.
Okay, well, I think I was probably the first person that I know of anyway to report on how momentous a change this really is. I interviewed for a story that I did for Vanity Fair, where I work all the time for 20 something years. I did a story on dating apps very early on. And because I was already using them, that's not what this piece was about. It was just, I was so stunned by how different it really was. And I was like, I wonder what this is doing to us or what this means to us, like in terms of history.
This is the rise of the dating app in general, like suddenly.
For heterosexual dating apps really took off in 2013, 2014, which I talk about in the book. And of course, Grindr, which is a gay dating app, really invented all of this kind of. In 2009, it came out. But for heterosexual people, I am heterosexual. I say cursed with straightness. It it really all took off in 2013, 2014. And I was using them and I was just like stunned by what was going on and what I was seeing and experiencing. So I didn't actually want to do a story on it. My boss at Vanity Fair, Graydon Carter, kind of convinced me to. And I agreed. And so I interviewed, and this is the part where about this historical thing. I interviewed the research director of the Kinsey Institute. Now, you know, the Kinsey Institute for Sex, and I don't remember the exact full name, Sex and Reproductive Studies or something like that. Kinsey, very famous, you know, the sex researchers that started in the 50s, I think, started Kinsey. And his name is Justin Garcia. And he said to me in this piece something that, you know, I tell people, and to this day, I mean, I think I was the first person to really say it in a piece via him, but I tell it to people, and it's still very hard to put your mind around because we're all kind of like the frog in the pot that's getting hotter and hotter, and we don't really realize it because we're living through a very historical moment. He said that this is the biggest shift in mating, what scientists call mating, we would call courtship, dating. It's the biggest shift in mating since the agricultural revolution. Right. And this is via and that was, you know, 10, 15,000 years ago. So this is major. The internet, dating apps, the way that people meet online has created this massive shift in this very, very central part of human life.
Right. One of the things I kept thinking reading your book is I remember when Facebook started and we were all like, oh, this is so nice. Oh, I haven't heard from you in 30 years. It's nice to reconnect. And you shared things and you did your friend groups. And then it all became sinister and, you know, bot driven and misinformation and sort of mean Twitter culture started to come into it. And apps, I think when they first appeared were a little bit like this, except maybe somewhat differently from Facebook. You write about how they were designed to be addictive.
Well, so is Facebook.
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah. This is, I find it more sinister.
Insidious. It is.
You said you thought that the goal of the apps is not to have a relationship, but a relationship with the app itself. And you quoted a French philosopher and said, when you invent the ship, you also invent the shipwreck. And they made it easier to be in touch. Smartphones made it easier to be in touch and yet more difficult to connect. So you interviewed like the founder of Tinder, the founder of many of these apps, and tell us that they basically said that to you. They pretended that they were interested in romance, but it really was designed to be an addictive way of interacting with other people, with the opposites, or with finding dates.
Yes. And sure, all of this social media is designed to be addictive. Sean Parker, who is the former president of Facebook, said in an interview in 2017, like, I don't really know even what this is doing to children's brains. You know, he said it in this kind of offhanded way. And of course that hits home for me too, because I also wrote a book about what it is doing to children and teenagers called American Girls, Social Media and the Secret Lives of Teenagers. I was sort of ahead of the curve. I know I was ahead of the curve because I got called a Luddite and I got accused of raising a moral panic and all this kind of stuff. And, oh, it's not that bad. Because in 2016, I'd already done this book about it. 2015, my Tinder piece came out and people were just sort of like, oh, she's just old. I mean, I was literally called old in a major publication, too old to really know what's going on. I mean, since somebody asked me, do you feel vindicated? Because since then, you know, it's just become so obviously clear through my work and studies that have come out and different things that we now know about all this. And now we're in techlash, because techlash meaning a backlash against tech, finally. Because now we know that this stuff is really tearing at the fabric of society. And I'm going to get to how that works into dating in a second. Do you feel vindicated? Well, I don't really feel vindicated. I feel upset and sad because these problems are really urgent. And when it comes to dating apps, it's upending, you know, the lives of so many people, particularly women, people of color, people in the LGBTQ community tend to suffer more harms on these apps, more harassment. Women are in danger and experiencing sexual assault and rape that's not talked about enough. So I do think that we've come to a point, like you're referencing, we've come to a point where we now kind of know, like, hey, this stuff is really not just creepy and weird, but dangerous. And not just dangerous like you might get raped, but dangerous to, like, you might not be the same person anymore that you used to be. And so I don't feel vindicated because I feel like these things are so urgent to talk about. And while I do feel that has happened when it comes to, like, Facebook, Google, the big four, Amazon, Apple, you know, we're talking about all that, dating apps still are not part of that important conversation that we need to have. I'm virtually the only person who consistently writes about this or talks about this. I did a film. There's a poster. I didn't set this up to, like, show you the poster of my film. My daughter's actually out in the other room, needing that room to Zoom for her internship. So this was the only place I could really Zoom. But that is the poster of the film that I made called Swiped, Hooking Up in the Digital Age, which is a documentary you can still see on HBO. And it's on Amazon too, but I don't get any money for that. You have to pay a few bucks. But if you don't have HBO. But after I did the documentary, I still felt like this isn't sinking in. And I was getting so many emails and so many DMs from young women in particular saying, I watched your documentary. This is exactly what's happening to me. And I have so many young women friends that I interview and sources. And I felt like I needed to keep talking about it and finally tell what I know about it personally, you know.
Well, you also point out that swiping, that the act of swiping is akin to, like, playing, gambling or playing a slot machine, that just the act of swiping and looking at all the choices and looking at other choices creates a demand for the choice itself. You stop sort of looking for the one or something. You're like always wanting the next thing, like the next big win. But let's talk about some of the fallout.
The business model is engagement. The business model is engagement with the app. And that's insidious enough when it's Facebook and you're just supposed to be talking to your friends. But, people in, political groups figured out, like, I can get you addicted to my conspiracy theory, or I can get you addicted to learning more about they figured out how to weaponize it. And when it comes to dating apps, what happened is that you become addicted to just the act of engaging with the app to the point where you're not necessarily getting, like, your significant other of your dreams, but you stop wanting them because this is giving you this dopamine rush of matching. And you might be matching with something that's not even a real person. It might be a bot, so
sorry, carry on. I'll come back to it. Go on.
So anyway, I'm trying to answer your point about the addiction. So I interviewed for Swiped, my film, and I talk about in the book as well, about how I personally got addicted is what I talk about in the book. But for my film, I interviewed, and I, report on that in the book, Jonathan Badeen, who's one of the founders of Tinder, which is one of the biggest apps out there. Probably people know. And Jonathan Badeen invented the swipe. And in past articles, he had talked about, he invented it through, rubbing the fog off on a mirror and seeing himself in the mirror. That might be true. Maybe that happened. But I interviewed a social scientist at NYU named Adam Alter, who wrote a great book called Irresistible about addiction. Yeah. And he said, well, maybe, but this really looks like the variable ratio schedule to me. What's that? The variable ratio schedule? What are you talking about? It's behavioral science. And I'll explain it in a second. So I asked Jonathan Badeen, does this have anything to do with that? And he said quite plainly, oh, yes, that was the model. I learned about that in college. And, he's a tech engineer who invented the swipe, but he's like, yeah, that's right. If you have infrequent rewards as opposed to expected rewards for something, it causes you to keep going. It's like gambling. It's like gambling or a slot machine. This in the 1970s, this controversial psychologist named B.F. Skinner did an infamous experiment with white pigeons.
Yeah, I love this part. Yeah, I was going to ask you about the pigeon experiment. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, when I was doing the film and I watched the footage of this experiment, which is in my film, I'm here to talk about the book, not the film, but they're kind of related. I was like, oh my God, that's Tinder. That's pigeons doing essentially pigeon Tinder, which is that they're taught to peck. And when they peck, they get a little piece, like a little reward, a little piece of food. And when they know they're going to peck and get the food, they get bored. But when they peck, and they don't know when they're going to get the food, they get excited about just pecking and seeing when they're going to get the food. These are pigeons with brains this small. and then they just start pecking even when they don't get food, just to play the game.
Right.
And that's exactly, yeah.
And also, let alone the data selling that is going on from about the most intimate things about people. It's not even like, you go shopping for a pair of shoes and suddenly you're tracked by all these shoe ads. This is incredibly intimate data that they are selling, that these app companies are selling and sharing.
Yeah. And we've all sort of gotten used to this idea that like, oh yeah, they're selling our data. Well, we shouldn't get used to it on any platform. It's not right. It's value and labor that they're essentially taking from us without our consent, without our explicit consent, and sometimes without our knowledge. But it's particularly, I think, really troubling when it comes to dating apps because it is so personal. And they, most dating apps lied or didn't tell quite the truth about data collection until last year. They had to admit it. 2020 was when there was an investigation by a European, like a public kind of, it's in Norway, like a sort of public, health organization looked into this and said, whoa, they are stealing data from people. And this involves, like on OkCupid, you answer questions on your sexual preferences, on, they give you this big old questionnaire to allegedly match you up with the right person. It's all a lie. That's not what it's for.
You mean it's not scientific?
No. That's not what it's for at all. It's so that they can sell your data to ad companies. It's ad tech.
Oh man. And I thought this would lead me to the prince of my dreams. I
think, I'm so glad you said that, because that is what is so wrong about this. It's a bad faith proposition. It's a business model that's essentially a lie. I mean, we could say even a scam, and it taps into people's very real and very human need to be connected and to find someone, not everybody wants to be with someone. I get that. But mostly as human beings, we want love. We want connection. Many people want a relationship. Most people on Tinder even say 80% of people on Tinder say they want a relationship.
Right.
But that is not what these apps are designed to get you. And they tap into it and they say that's what they're going to get you, but they're not fairy godmothers. We want to think that it's like that easy. Oh, it's so easy. Just, I'm going to swipe and I'm going to tap and I'm going to do this, I'm going to that. And seeing like bibbity bobbity boo, it's going to be this wonderful person. But they're not fairy godmothers. They're businesses. They're capitalists who want your value. And the value comes not just from the money that you might pay for the subscription, but from your data and your time and your energy and all this effort that you're putting into this. A lot of people, women and men that I've interviewed, and people who identify in other ways, say that dating apps are exhausting. And that's because you're working. You just don't know it, but you're working.
Okay. Well, so now let's talk about the fallout of this. One of the things you quote a lot of young women who are bemoaning the lack of chance encounters, of just men approaching in real life.
Or them being able to approach both. Yeah.
Right. And then you've also, and this has been documented in so many studies, the incredible loneliness, especially amongst Gen Zers, but also millennials. And they're also just like despite the rise of these dating apps, they're not actually having sex and when they are, they don't seem to be enjoying it very much. Do you want to talk about how the apps might be affecting that?
Yes. I talk about this a lot in my book because it was very puzzling to me why we were continuing to get these reports that young people are not having sex. And very often these reports would come like in some celebratory way. Like, I think that's the kind of weird priggishness or prudishness that exists in certain media. Like, they're not having sex. Isn't that good?
I think it's mothers of teenagers. I was a little heartened by that at first, but then you think, no, these are young adults now. This is creepy. There's something going on here.
Yeah, and I didn't believe it because that wasn't what I was hearing from the hundreds of young people I was interviewing. Because what they're talking about in those studies is, can I just say words and, I don't want to offend anybody. What they're really talking about in those studies is intercourse. They're saying that young people they say less sex, but really what they mean when you get into what the study is really about, they're having less intercourse, sexual intercourse. And that I think is entirely possible. Why? Because young people and people of all ages really are having more cyber sex. Sex has moved onto screens like everything else. And cyber sex is anything from, masturbating to each other on FaceTime to exchanging nudes and masturbating to nudes, chatting, like doing cyber sex chat. There's people are having different kinds of sex. Perhaps they are having less intercourse. That's perhaps true, but again, also in these studies, there are studies about how people lie and studies about sex. So
yeah, well, that's always true.
Right. So, but wait, if I can finish.
Yeah, of course.
So they're having less sex, perhaps it's true, but also if they're having less, I was like, when I started using dating apps and having sex with people from dating apps, what I realized is this is really not fun in the way that sex is supposed to be. And I'm not at all surprised if people are actually opting out of doing this because I'm not saying every single time. And I had a lot of, encounters that were kind of hot, but a lot of it is bad. It's really, really bad, especially I think for a lot of women because it's impersonal and the guy, if you're a straight woman, the guy doesn't really know you or maybe care about, and there's studies about this too. I'm not just saying it like,
no,
there's a big study out of NYU of like 20,000 college age people, really big study that said that, guys tend to not try as hard to give a woman pleasure if they don't know them very well, or aren't invested in knowing them, or don't ever think that they're going to have a relationship with them. So hookup culture, as it's known, leads to bad sex, especially for women. And I don't think it's that great for guys either. And again, you know, I'm not excluding anybody in this book. I talk also about the experience of gay men and women and people in the LGBTQ community and how these apps are challenging to their experiences as well. But because it is a memoir and it is so focused on my experience as a straight woman and also on the misogyny, really my main problem here is how this is exacerbating an already existing misogyny in our world, which I think it does. And so if you're going to be on an app where I'm just speaking as like a young woman or woman my age, being on an app where a guy's going to ask you for nudes, want to masturbate to your nudes. If you do hook up, it's going to be bad. He's going to not really be that interested in you having such a good time. Why would you do it? Like, it becomes not so exciting. It's not fun.
Right. Well,
like I just want to make sure that it's clear that I'm never saying this is like across the board for every person, but these are the general trends I'm describing.
Right. I think I want to get now to the personal aspect of your book, because you did do that over and over again, these hookups that just, I think there was a review, it was maybe the New York Times.
What do you mean by over and over again?
Well,
what do you mean by that?
I mean that you had a lot of strange men, often not in your apartment, but I mean, men you just met on the app, you didn't know them beforehand, and have them come over and have sex a lot. I mean,
so what you've just said to me is that over and over again, you had a lot of strange men just come over to your apartment and just have sex.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that is not the way that I frame it in the book at all.
Well, you just talked about the coursing effect, that it wasn't fun. And you wrote about how it was exhausting and boring for you a lot of the time. And isn't that what you were just describing?
I wonder if you can hear how that framing of it sounds to me.
Well, I think one of the reviewers said,
which reviewer are you talking about?
The New York Times.
Okay.
She said, "Oh my God, this is like a horror show. Nancy, don't do it. Nancy, don't pick up the phone. Nancy, don't text him back." And as the reader's going through this, I mean, these were all very young, men in their 23 to 29, and the reader has a sense of, this isn't going to work out how the author thinks it's going to work out or is describing it going to work out.
Oh, is that what you thought?
Well,
that I was clueless and I really didn't know.
No, but you did have a lot of relationships that you described as being very disheartening and disappointing.
And do you think, from what you read in my book, that my experience is isolated to myself?
No, that's what I'm picking up for what you said before, is this relentless choice, these, when you have lots of experiences where it's not satisfying. So you told me before this interview started that the last time that you went on a date was 1987. Yeah, I said that at the beginning of the interview. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay. So you said that I didn't know when you pressed record. So you said that the last time you went on a date was 1987.
Yes.
Okay. So the person who wrote that review in the New York Times, who I happen to know, and I clapped back at her on social media.
Oh, I didn't see that. Yeah. What'd you say?
Okay. Well, I know her, and we do not have the best history. I don't really know what the problem is, but there's been a problem in the past, and I felt that she should have recused herself from doing that review, which I thought was condescending and sexist. And I clapped back at her for that, and clapped back at the New York Times for that on social media as best I could, to let readers know that this was not a true representation of, I thought, my book or me. And so to hear you repeat it, even having read the book to my face, is disheartening as well, because I feel that I felt that in that review, there was a lot of judgmentalism, like judgmental things, like, this is a person who I do know, and she's also been married for a long time. Or no, I think her husband died, actually, sadly, but was married for a really long time. And she was actually, in the review, said that she was giving the book to her 19-year-old son,
who then wanted your number. But
no, I think I deserve to finish my thought.
Okay, sure, of course, go.
Because I thought that review was judgmental, and I thought that it was pearl clutchy, and I thought that it was not taking into account the fact that it talked about me like I was an idiot and not a journalist and not somebody who has written best-selling books and award-winning articles and made a film. It talked about me like I was just some dumb girl, really, who really didn't know what she was doing. The book is an investigation. The book is about me going into what I call the Dating App Inferno. And the reason I'm doing this and being upfront and honest about it is because I know, not because I'm some stupid kid who doesn't know any better, but because I know from interviewing lots and lots and lots of young women and men and people who identify in other ways, that this is dating app culture. This is hookup culture. This is what's going on now. And I'm trying through my work to expose what is unhealthy about all this and challenging to the well-being of people, including myself. But now I get to finish.
I'm not cutting you off.
Okay. Because I think that you framing it that way, just like that woman did in the New York Times, is judgmental. It's saying that, like, well, you were just so dumb. You were like, what the hell were you thinking? Didn't you know what to expect? This is the way this culture is set up. This is the way these apps are set up. They were originally called hookup apps. These are, this is a kind of misogynistic sort of dystopia that I'm describing. So to turn it around and be like, there's something wrong with you, Nancy Jo, that you did all these things and made all these shitty
I thought
choices.
You were proving your point because you spoke to all these young women who were disheartened because of the very nature, the impersonal nature that you were talking about, and being depressed and isolated, lonely. I thought the way you were using the apps was similar, and it showed. It's not about stupidity; it's about showing how. I mean, a lot of your book was very poignant. It was very upsetting because you were upset, and you were upset.
This is the culture. I'm upset for young people and older people too. I mean, there's a woman in the book who I call Constance in the book, who's my friend, who's 60. And I open the book with a scene with her because there's a lot of women out there, you're in a marriage that's lasting. I'm happy for you. But there's lots of women who, and all kinds of people who aren't in relationships, who are single, who experience divorce or the death of a spouse or a partner. And they get to a point where they would like to be with someone again. And right now there's this sort of capitalistic overtake, there's this sort of capitalistic colonization of dating that I try and describe in the book, in which people behave in certain ways because we're kind of being, you're talking before about like pigeons. We're being programmed to like behave in certain ways. These apps were, I would argue, designed to sort of deliver up bodies of women to men, whether they're in person or through images, nude images. But it's kind of, I think a lot of the time, and again, I'm not talking about gay dating or LGBTQ dating, it's a different thing. It's kind of in the service of straight men. And it do you have sons, by the way?
Yes, I have a son.
Okay. And how old is he?
He's 27.
Okay. So,
and I have 2 grown daughters, so they're in the thick of this.
Okay. So I don't know if you talked to them about this, but another thing that really disturbed me about that New York Times review, and by the way, so your listeners know, I got really great reviews everywhere else. that weren't written by someone who knows me and doesn't like me, but who is a person who also, I think, probably hasn't been on a date in a long time because she's been married, you know? And so it's much easier to judge this woman, me, her age, who's getting, call it an inferno, who's getting sucked into this inferno, and say like, well, you're just, how, at our age, how do you not know any better, Nancy Joe? But look, what I'm trying to say is that this culture is set up this way. It's an inferno where you get like sucked in. And this is what's expected of you, to send nudes, which is completely contrary to like safety in so many ways. But it's just, so what bothered me about this review was also that this woman kept giving it to her 19-year-old son. He said, Mom, it's normal. Mom, it's normal. It's normal, Mom. It's not normal.
She did mention her son was autistic.
I think that I think that, you know.
I mean, I don't know. It was a weird add-on. I agree. But let's go back.
It's not normal. It's not normal. It's not normal. As we just discussed, it's a huge and brutal and sudden change in the way that we've evolved.
Right.
And it's sudden, and it's from like 15,000 years ago. It's very, very sudden, and it's based on a corporate capitalistic model. So it's not normal, it's been normalized.
Let me
if you keep interrupting me, then I can't defend myself against your.
I'm going to rephrase it so to continue on this theme.
It's not normal. It's been normalized.
Okay. So when you went and you started with the dating apps, what did you hope for? What were you expecting? Were you looking to meet someone?
Of course. I was looking for the same thing that everyone who goes on a dating app is looking for. I was looking for sex, love, companionship, anybody who dates. I was just a person who dates. I had my heart broken. I was looking to be with somebody. If that was for, one night, I'm not open to that. That can be really fun before. I mean, once upon a time it was, but I was looking for connection, just like everybody else who dates. I am no different from anyone else. Do you think that there's something different about me personally?
No, I think maybe you've been hurt by this review and you see that any questioning of your experience, which you wrote about so frankly, is somehow judgmental. And I'm trying to understand your reaction to it in the context of how disheartening these apps, your thesis, these apps have made dating. And one of the things that I was surprised by, that if you are, because I think we're actually exact contemporaries, I may be 1 year older than you are. If you are looking for companionship, you set your parameters, I think, for 25 to 29-year-old young men, correct?
Is that wrong?
Well, no, but I don't think it's going to necessarily lead to the kind of companionship that you would want.
Why do you think that?
Because I don't think men of that age are necessarily looking to get married.
I never wanted to get married to anybody. I don't want to get married.
Maybe they're not also susceptible to long-term relationships at that age.
So you do think that it was on me? That the reason why the reason why I had these experiences, which included sexual assault, was on me because I set my discovery wrong? Is that what you're saying?
No, you're projecting. What I'm trying to say is that when you invite a 27-year-old man you don't know to your apartment to have quick sex that minute, not like even get to know, not even for a drink, that's not going to lead to the lasting.
You've crossed the line. I'm sorry. You've crossed the line.
How did I cross the line?
Because what you just said was so slut shaming. And I wanted to
see how it's slut shaming. Tell me how I'm slut shaming. Tell me how I'm slut shaming.
I will tell you in a second. Okay. I will tell you in a second. You interrupt me a lot too, which I wish you wouldn't do. I wish you would allow me to finish my thoughts before you start talking again. Can I do that?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I would love for this to work out. I would love to be able to talk to you, you know, in a way that's positive and helps people listening who've been through these things as I have, to know that they're not alone. I feel from our conversation and the things that you've said to me so far, I feel judged by you and I feel slut shamed by you. And these are things that I have a right to feel based on what you've said. And you, I think, are in the position as the interviewer to want to know why I feel that way, not to argue that I shouldn't. But
I didn't. I asked you, why do you feel that way?
Okay. Maybe you would learn something more, not just about me, but about this culture, about what young women, young people are going through. If you would listen to what I have to say, and also to listen to what I have to say about what you said, and not be defensive and not think that, you know, I'm just overreacting to a bad review or something. And once again, that person knew me and we have a weird history. It's something so petty, it's not even worth talking about. But people who know you and had little disputes over time with you should not be writing reviews of your book. So can I tell you what I think is slut shaming about what you said?
Go ahead.
And what I think that I'm pretty sure a lot of my friends and young women friends would think is slut shaming about what you said. What I believe you said was, what were you thinking? You set your discovery at men in their 20s and you're old. And so,
well, you're my age, so I called myself old too. Okay. I'm 58. Actually.
Okay, so you're saying that I'm old, so I'm not.
No, I'm just saying it's a big disparity, for male or female.
Oh, and what is, okay, so here's my questions going through my mind when you say these things to me. So, I mean, so what is wrong with that? I mean, I don't really get what's wrong with that to you. But, and what were you thinking? Because when you had these young men come over to your house and you just had them come over to have quickie sex. Well, I don't know where in my book you got that's your projection, because there was
incident after incident. It's not my projection. It's
incident after incident. Where are my pearls? Where are my pearls? What I'm arguing with, oh my God, incident after incident. What I'm objecting to here is that you say that I was asking them over to my house just to fuck. Is that what you're saying?
That's what you write about, and you say that. You say that over and over.
Find me the passage in the book.
I would just open the whole book. I mean,
it's absolutely not true.
You had I mean, and then you would meet them.
It's your. Oh my God! I met them in my gym. Oh my God, Nancy Jo, what were you thinking?
No, you are twisting my words. I am genuinely.
You are twisting my words. There's not a passage in the book, and I'll get your email. I'd like you to.
I would be delighted. I will do that. And you classified guys by the way they fuck, like you had nicknames for them.
Listen.
So I'm just saying that it was a kind of.
Listen, I'd like to tell, if you're going to publish this review if you're going to publish this interview, I'd like to tell your viewers, listeners, I'd like to tell your listeners that this person who's interviewing me is not someone who seems to be able to understand my book, nor has she read it. She's not a good reader of my book. And I feel uncomfortable. I feel slut shamed. And I don't think you got my book or why I wrote it. And I do really thank you and appreciate you having me come on your podcast. But this is going to be over now because you have insulted me. You've offended me. You've been really kind of ugly to me. And I think it's so sad because you are supposed to be so interested in modern culture. And yet you're like pinning all of this on like the stupidity of this old slut is basically what you're saying to me. And you're not letting me, and I hate to talk about myself this way, but I have to tell your viewers, Yale and Columbia educated, best-selling, award-winning journalist and author, also a documentary filmmaker. You're not talking to me with the respect that I deserve. So this interview is over.
Okay, I'm sorry you feel that way. Okay. Wow. Nancy Jo, maybe the problem is not with the apps. So that was like a first date that went catastrophically wrong. I'm glad we didn't have sex. She was wrong, though, I think, about me clutching my pearls. The whole strand already broke halfway through reading her book. I did, however, contact the New York Times reviewer Nancy Jo accused of having a history with. Because when you say that someone has a conflict when you're reviewing your book, that's a serious charge, especially when it appears in the Times. So the reviewer's name is Judith Newman, and she is the author of To Siri with Love, A Mother, Her Autistic Son, and the Kindness of Machines. The passage I was remembering, by the way, which set off Nancy Jo, was Newman writing, I've just spent 4 hours staring at my Kindle, murmuring to no one in particular, Nancy, don't text him. Nancy, honey, don't do it. Be strong. Resist this one time, Nancy. No, which was my reaction a lot of the time, too. In any case, here is what Judith Newman replied when I told her that Nancy Jo said she had a conflict. She writes, Nancy Jo Sales reached out to me in 2013 because I thought her book, The Bling Ring, was fascinating. I'd reviewed it for People. We met, and it was very nice. We had a few other text exchanges about stories, and far from having some sort of vendetta, I admired her work and told her so. Call me crazy, but I don't think a review is a press release. The job of a reviewer is to render an opinion in such a way that a reader can decide whether or not they want to read it. As for being a prude, what can I say? I was a sex columnist for one magazine for years under a pseudonym. On a scale of prudishness, I suppose I'm somewhere between Mrs. Gaskell and Caligula. So, listeners, I'd love to hear your views on this. Was she crazy? Or am I? Reach out to us at contact@femsplainers.com. That's contact@femsplainers.com. And also feel free to share some of your own crazy experiences on dating apps. Anyway, that's it for this episode. See you next time. The Femsplainers is a weekly podcast carried on the Ricochet Network and available pretty much on every podcast platform. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and watch video of our interviews on YouTube. You'll find links to everything, plus how to contact us directly at femsplainers.com. We survive and depend on your support. Like the show? Consider donating as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/femsplainers. And get our exclusive monthly bonus episode, Last Call, in which you get to join the conversation with our guests. And there's much more. And a big shout out of thanks to our audio and video editor, Nat Frum.